This is the Lotus podcast with me, Dane Ensley. We often don't draw a parallel between the effects of climate change and mental health. I sat down with Bonnie Wright to discuss her experiences within her personal and professional life and how she's managed to cope. Bonnie is an actress well known for her early role in the Harry Potter franchise. She has gone on to act, write, direct, and produce many other projects in her adult life. What interests me most about Bonnie is her deep passion for environmental activism. She is also fully committed to taking care of her mind and body. We both imagine there must be a correlation between how we take care of our heads and how we do or do not take care of our ecosystem. I did some research into the effects of climate change on mental health. According to Nick Obradovich, Robin Miglerini, Martin P. Paulus, and Iyad Rawan, there is empirical evidence of mental health risks posed by climate change. In their research, the authors state sound mental health, a critical facet of human well-being, has the potential to be undermined by climate change. Few large-scale studies have empirically examined this hypothesis. Here, we show that short-term exposure to more extreme weather, multi-year warming, and tropical cyclone exposure each associate with worsened mental health. Well-being falters without sound mental health. Scholars have recently indicated that the impacts of climate change are likely to undermine mental health through a variety of direct and indirect mechanisms. The authors also share, well-being falters without sound mental health. Scholars have recently indicated that the impacts of climate change are likely to undermine mental health through a variety of direct and indirect mechanisms. They go on to make their case that climate change creates chaotic weather conditions, and this can be a factor in diminishing someone's ability to cope. I was working as a substance abuse counselor in New York City when Hurricane Sandy hit in October of 2012. I remember having to walk over the Manhattan Bridge from Brooklyn into Manhattan to get to work due to extensive subway flooding south of 34th Street. I was lucky. The devastation from this superstorm was immense along the East Coast. I worked in a team that attempted to provide outpatient substance abuse counseling to a portion of the homeless population at that time. More than a few of these people did not return for their counseling. In their research article, Mental Health Effects of Hurricane Sandy, Characteristics, Potential Aftermath and Response, Dr. Yuval Neria, PhD, and Dr. James M. Schultz, PhD, explore the role of exposure during rare climatic events and argue the mental health effects of any given disaster are related to the intensity of exposure to the event. Sustaining personal injury and experiencing the injury or death of a loved one in the disaster are particularly potent predictors of psychological impairment. Researchers have also indicated that disaster-related displacement, relocation, and loss of property and personal finances are risk factors for mental health problems such as post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. Researchers from Stanford and Berkeley, Marshall Burke, Felipe Gonzalez, Patrick Bayless, and Sam Heft-Neal used comprehensive data from multiple decades for both of the United States and Mexico and found suicide rates rise 0.7% in U.S. counties and 2.1% in Mexican municipalities for a 1 degree Celsius increase in monthly average temperature. They project that unmitigated climate change could result in a combined 9 to 40,000 additional suicides across the United States and Mexico by 2050, representing a change in suicide rates comparable to the estimated impact of economic recessions, suicide prevention programs, or gun restriction laws. I remember Bonnie telling me how she was going to waltz up to the Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta to hand-deliver a petition demanding the company phase out production of single-use plastic. I knew then and there she was the real deal. Whether it's a combined yoga surfing retreat in the Nicoya Peninsula blue zone of Costa Rica or boarding a Greenpeace ship to survey ocean waste, Bonnie is a strong, consistent advocate for the evolution of our mental and ecological well-being. When you're growing up with your family, who sounds like they're all involved in the arts and really artistic, and I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about his ability to process information as a child through his art, through comedy, through acting. And I wonder about that. I wonder how much that influenced your ability to process feelings and emotions through growing up. We all have moments in childhood and when we're teenagers and young adulthood when we struggle with shit, normal shit and then abnormal shit. And I wonder if you were aware of that, or if now looking back you can attach to that idea.
Yeah, I think it's like those things can work for and against you. I think what works hopefully more and more for me, which maybe didn't work as well for me when I was younger, is that I would say that the way I do things is I observe for a very long time until I decide to have an opinion about it or confront something or someone about it. And obviously that ability and nature to observe is hugely beneficial. It helped me acting. It's helped me tell my own stories because I've observed so many, or been very curious to observe so many. And then I think it helps the health of your mind, because it can make you just slowly slow down, and not everything has to be like a reaction and a knee-jerk reaction. And I think that helped me. I think I was naturally I think it was like a split between either me dwelling on things for too long when I was younger and not speaking my mind, and then when it was almost too late or like so much was bottled up, it would be like this explosion of thought, and it's like, where did that come from like a silent person? Or the other extent of that, I think as a battle to that, sometimes I could be reactive at not the right time. It's either kind of bottle it up and observe and listen and then thoughtfully have an opinion, or at times when it was like I didn't know how to process it, it would be quite a reactive thing, which is something that I feel like I worked a lot on in like my late teens, like early 20s, and feel I've tried to take in like the way I work in a more observational way a bit more into as well, just how I am as a person. And I think this is something that we all learn. I think it's like, just because we have a quick opinion about something, or someone sets off a trigger with us and we just react because we're being like quite self-defensive. And I think that comes at an age when you're just trying to work out what you're protecting in yourself, in terms of like what you're protecting and celebrating. Like, oh, I'm that kind of person and I'm actually going to protect that because I really believe that I believe in this thing, or I believe I should be this way because they're attributes that you think is good. And when people start to question that, you begin to sort of like throw it back in your face because you're fiercely trying to figure yourself out. And then after a while, I think you realize when people set off, say things that set off, say if you're like fiercely loyal and someone, questioned you for that, I think when you're younger, you could throw it back in their face because it hurt you, because that's really important to you, and you see it as like an offense that they gave to you. And then out of time and experience, you realize like that's just me interpreting what they're saying as them attacking my care for loyalty. And like I think that's what I learned a lot about. Like I would be quite good with that in my work, be quite slow and observant and not reactive, but in like a personal way, like wasn't in those years. So I would say that's what was worked for and against me in terms of that kind of artistic mindset. Yeah.
It's also, I relate to what you said in the way that your assets, the things that you maybe like about yourself or other people like about you, can be defective at the same time. I'm relating to it when you said loyalty. Loyalty for me can be, it always has been a massive asset.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, it can be really defective, like being
Yeah.
too loyal, or being
Yeah,
loyal
and
to a point
seeing-
where
yeah.
like I don't take care of myself.
Yeah, and also in moments realizing when you're kind of being a doormat for someone.
Yeah.
Or realizing when you're like, no matter what I say to this person, they are just going to keep doing what I'm telling them and advising them not to do.
Yeah.
Like we've all been there when someone's like, you know, complaining about a relationship and you're just like, do you really want me to tell you again? Because I've told you so many times that the only way you get through to them is just like, look, I really can't like expend more energy explaining this to you because until you realize it, like what's the point?
Is there a place for mental health within a film production on the day-to-day? So I work with professionals and help them take care of themselves outside of the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those times when you're not working where you're either hyper focused on something you want to change, or you're coming to the place where you are realizing there are things to change. But I wonder if, because there are these, and it's not just those films, you've made other films, you've acted in other films, you've produced and directed and written other films. And I wonder, in your own experience, if there's a place for some activity or a personnel on set that can help people navigate moments, or is the stress and the frustration or the excitement necessary for the creative process? I don't know. Maybe we won't ever know. I mean,
I think it's also like how addicted to that stress do you become, and that sort of adrenaline. Like I had that recently. I was working like back to back on 2 projects, and I went back to London for 2 weeks, like in the midst of that, and I was just like full on running on adrenaline for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew it, and with me, I'm always like scared about when projects are going to finish, and then I'm going to like, the inevitable is going to happen. Yeah. And that happened to me like 2 weeks ago, and I had like the worst week ever because I suddenly crashed, and I knew that the week of quietness was coming. And from the months of busyness, like everything will come up that I've been like suppressing. And I think it's difficult, I think as well, when you're directing things and producing things, because people are always turning to you. Oh, what do you want for this? And what do you want for that? And how should we do this? And I'm learning more and more that you don't have to immediately answer people. And that's like saved me a lot. Because
are you okay with not knowing every answer? Yeah.
And also I hate when people aren't honest with you about something that they feel comfortable doing. And then you think that they can do something and then they can't do it. And it lets the project down. Like if I am honest about like, oh, you know what, I've never worked with that piece of equipment. Like I need to be honest about that. But at first I'd be like, I need to look like I know everything, and I need to know what I'm doing. I'm directing, and which is an inevitable like thing in that early age sense. But I think mental health, I mean, not just in the industry I'm in, but in so many industries is just, you know, obviously we know that there is such a stigma around it, and there's such a sort of not a natural instinctive sort of feeling to ask for help or to ask for guidance or to be supported in any way outside of maybe your colleagues you're working with, your friends, but like someone who is like a removed, separate like part. Or even just asking friends. I think we can often sometimes, or have been in the past, quite convoluted when we're actually asking for help and see that as like a bad thing, but we'll happily go and physically examine ourselves all the time at different doctors. And I think on a set, it's hard. There's so many people on film sets, and you're dealing with everyone who's got, you know, they're coming to work with their issues and their jobs, and it's all so related. It's like if one cog within the machine sort of starts to deteriorate and break down, then it's all gonna start, you know, slowly breaking down. So I think an industry like film is even more something that needs to be, you know, given support to. I don't know in what, like how that would be and what kind of form of a person that would be.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was once on this film in Thailand, and obviously like Thai massage in Thailand, I mean, like, it's pretty inexpensive and everyone can, like, you find someone to do it. And at first I felt like, oh, that's really bad that they've, brought this guy on to be literally like the on-set masseuse. And, initially I don't even know why. I guess I thought, like, that's, to me, and that's such a reflection of my personality. I was like, that's just really indulgent. Like that, not indulgent of the production, but we look like
I don't deserve it.
Work is so difficult. Like, do I need a massage? But actually, it was a really taxing shoot, and actually having an on-set massage was great. When I finally said, like, go have one, And then he would literally sit, you sat on a chair, you weren't in a scene or whatever, and he'd come over and just give you a quick, like, 5-minute, and you just instantly were just like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, why did I? But it was funny, my immediate reaction. But yeah.
It's funny hearing you say or talk about how you will go and work for a time and not take care of yourself maybe optimally.
Yeah.
And then crash. Because I think we all do, I mean, we definitely all do that. But I know you as being very, like, present-minded. And like you said, in describing yourself, thoughtful, and whenever we've had discussions about anything, it always feels like you're really there, and you're respectful, and you honor the time and the space. So thinking about you going, running on adrenaline and then crashing, I guess it's just funny for me to think about you doing that, because I can't really imagine it.
What, you can't imagine me ever, crashing or?
I just don't know what, like, a Bonnie Wright crash and burn looks like. Like, is it, like, I don't leave my house for 5 days?
That's why I have a dog. I can walk. I think for me, it's like, you get into an industry like film, no matter if you're acting, you're directing, whatever job you're going to be doing, unless you're like in a production office and you have a 9-to-5 job, or obviously there's hundreds of parts of the film industry that are 9-to-5. But for me, I knew getting into any creative industry, and luckily I'm from that background anyway, in terms of experiencing that, witnessing it with my parents and my brother, but I always knew, no matter what, I'm going to have to be okay with quiet time and busy time. Otherwise, this industry is like not I shouldn't be working in it. So I think for me, the only thing that gets me through that is like, you made that deal. Like, the minute you decided to get into this world, you made the deal with yourself that you have to be okay in moments where, like, it's quiet. And like, recently it's been okay because I knew that there were other things like coming along, but I've had times in the past where it's just this kind of open expanse of not knowing, and that's soul destroying, because you then start questioning your ability to do things, and then it becomes just like way kind of, it just becomes, I guess a lot of it, you just want some respite from yourself, because it can put you into this space, and I can naturally be so, introverted and like overly think about everything. So often it's just like, what I love about filmmaking is that it's so demanding, you can't be in your own head, because it's crazy hours. Like, if you're shooting the next day and you have all these things to do, well, you just got to get it done. Like, you just got to get it done. Like, the show must go on kind of feeling. And that I love, because I don't even have time to stop to think about myself. So it's like, great, I can just like start stashing away all these things that like I'm not taking care of. And then it's funny though, recently, like I had those few months and then I had a week, and previously in the past when people are like, oh, how's your week? And I'd be like, oh yeah, it was fine, it was good. And like, I had a week that was like, I think I saw you at the end of that week. I think it was, and I was like, I actually didn't have a good week, but I knew. I
remember you saying
like,
that.
I was like, it was terrible, because I just hated not being busy. And then suddenly, like this week, I'm like, how did all these simple tasks that a month ago I would have got done in 5 minutes because I didn't have any time, so I squeezed it in, is now taking me like 5 hours to do. And what's that thing? Ask a busy person, you get it done. Like, that is so, and I love being the busy person because I get things done for myself very quickly. Whereas now, but it's fine. I think it ebbs and flows. And then I had and then the following week was great because I got into this new project that I knew was coming up, but I just like needed to sort of readjust. I think also you need to be really good at and I think this comes the case with people who like travel as well a lot for work. I think you just need to be, and I think we are naturally as human beings, we are adaptable. Like we are we are evolving all the time, so we're good at adapting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you just have to be good at always being adaptable, able to sort of recalibrate yourself according to the job at hand or the not job at hand.
Yeah, I just learned that.
Yeah.
It was like this whole this podcast and my agency and then my work and then my life and telling whatever it is, like I'm ready for the next thing. Like I'm ready for all these things to take off and be what they're supposed to be. And I think I'm ready, right? And then it was like a response instantly, and I didn't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
And it was like the recalibration. I was forced to recalibrate, but there was about a week where I lost my shit.
Yeah.
I just like couldn't breathe. My head, I mean, everything was just there. And it came to a point where we went to this party and I couldn't leave the car because I was like so freaked out, and I had to breathe my way through it and realize, okay, this is happening. It's not slowing down. And your goal is for it to actually be 10 times bigger than what it is now. So you better get on your shit. Like you better figure this out.
It's probably also, there's a part of you, which is like a good thing, that probably knows that it's going to take off. And often we can fight that. And I've done that for sure. Like, you know that all this stuff's about to take off and you slam the brakes down, even though you want it so bad. Yeah. You're like overwhelmed by the reality of it actually coming to fruition. Yeah. Like for me, I realized that most of my anxious tendencies or anxiety will come out in just the feeling of being overwhelmed. Yeah. Because I feel like aren't there two strands of often anxiety? It's either that, being overwhelmed, or like stressed or depressed, and that kind of, and for me, it's just, and I only realized that recently. And the minute I was like, you're just overwhelmed. It's like you're like, that's all it is. Like, it's not, you can do this, you're just like overwhelmed. Yeah. Do you feel like you have gotten better at beating yourself up less? Or are you still pretty hard on yourself? I think it's difficult. I'm sure I am. I'm like, no, I'm sure I am. I think if you're striving to always, as an artist in any, I think, you never retire. So you're always, until hopefully the day you can physically no longer, mentally no longer, or like do what you love to do, which is for me, tell stories and make films, then you hope you're never going to like not stop progressing and learning, because that would be really boring if you knew everything. And I think often with that curious kind of mind to keep growing comes this like self-critical side to it, because you're always questioning why you don't know more about that, or like why your craft didn't come through as good in this project, or you're always going to be analyzing things, because art is that analysis of life, of feeling, of politics, of context, of experience, travel. Like, you're, by making work as a reaction to life, you're analyzing things anyway. So it's like if you have the capability to make work like that, it's probably because you have a quite analytical mind. And I think it's like often trying to be like, how is it a positive, I guess. But I see it. I'm very good at witnessing it in other people, but I'm not very good at witnessing it myself. Welcome to the club. Yeah.
Lotus Crusher is sponsored in part by Qualia, a nootropic supplement produced by California-based Neurohacker Collective. With daily use, I have eliminated my procrastination, and my productivity has grown exponentially. With over 40 rare and premium brain-boosting ingredients formulated with optimal dosages, the difference in mental performance, mood, and energy from Qualia is unparalleled. Nourish your mind and increase your cognitive ability today. Use our discount code LOTUS, LOTUS at neurohacker.com and get 10% off single month orders or 15% off a subscription service. Where's your head at? Mine is fed by Qualia. You were in an ID article that I saw, and you gave tips on how to, what is this? This is, the title is amazing. Actress turned activist, Bonnie Wright's Guide to Breaking Free from Packaging.
Yeah.
So Olive and I, my girlfriend and I, we oftentimes reference Bonnie when looking at packaging or considering packaging, or like, oh fuck, we left our bags in the trunk at the store. And Bonnie would be really disappointed. There's a lot of really simple tips that you give. I'm wondering if you were to rewrite this article, or you were to write an article for Lotus Crusher on your tips from breaking free from what confines you in your head. Like, what do you do to take care of yourself? Like 8 tips. You don't have to be exactly 8, but what do you do that, because these are really simple. I mean, you kept it really easy. I know you do some other things that are not as simple, and you're big on the activism, that, you know, environmental activism, and I really look up to you and respect you for that.
Thank you. I think, those things that I've done in terms of writing for articles, often obviously the worst thing you want to do is overwhelm anyone, and you make it like manageable and bite size. And I always like encourage people, like, just choose one thing. Like with everything, we all have to like pick our battles. Otherwise there's so many issues in this world, and there's so many injustices of things that we do have to like pick our battles. And I guess why I'm so into, I guess most specifically under the huge umbrella of sort of, you know, sustainability and environmental issues, I've really like focused a lot of my work and energy on single-use plastic and packaging. And because for me, it's something that I really truly believe, like, choices that we make and habits we will break will actually have a huge impact on, you know, protecting marine life and really actually protecting ourselves, because that's, you know, it's all, you know, we're all in one big cycle and it's all interrelated. So in terms of if I was to do it on breaking free of, wait, how do you say it? Breaking free of.
I was trying to use the words from the article, but it doesn't have to be that. How do you, if you were to give somebody tips?
I think.
Like, what works for you? What do you actually do?
Yeah, sure.
Because there's a lot of people out there that will sell these methods. I mean, you have a massive following around your personality, and you could say anything. You say anything, and like 250,000 people would say, okay, cool, like maybe we should try that. But like, what does Bonnie Wright actually do?
So I guess in terms of practices that I found that helped me, I've been practicing Vedic meditation, which is the same as TM, for 3 years maybe. And so that's essentially a mantra-based meditation. It's like a 3-day sort of course that you do that's like pretty easy kind of course. It just sort of like sets the foundations, and your teacher gives you the mantra, and there's like 200 to 300 mantras, and sort of the one is chosen for you at random, and you sort of keep that to yourself and never really share that mantra, but it's essentially like a Sanskrit sound. And the idea with that, and the sort of like dream, is to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. I usually always, it's funny, it's like changed since having a puppy. I feel like I always used to get my morning one, and like maybe my after, I would say like 4 days out of 7 days, I'd get like twice a day. And mornings were always like my time and my thing, and I would have that space, where now it's like suddenly his time and he wants to play. So I've always been more getting my afternoon ones now than I have my morning ones. But that for me, and I know, like, even though I'm really, really busy and I'm not getting my 2 meditations in a day, like, I know that's, if I was to make and carve out any time in that busy day, the best spent 20 minutes, which is nothing, would be on that. And it's like and it's hugely been beneficial to me. I've had a lot of my ideas come straight out of meditations. And it's just so reflective of, I think, where you are. And like, it's such a good check-in for me. And it can be so random. Like I can feel super calm and in a great place, and I sit down to meditate, and it's just like, whoa, like all this stuff comes up. I think in fact, that's actually, as a practice, has been really good for me in terms of how hard I can be on myself. Meditating, you can be so hard on yourself whilst you're meditating. And so that is like my number one sort of practice that I've found personally, like just changed everything, and just changed just in that sense of mindfulness of being just that little bit kind of just waiting a second before that reaction comes, or just thinking in a more expansive way, and just realizing the complexities of like our bodies and how much we probably don't tap into. Other things, I stay quite active, I guess. I mean, those things kind of help. I mean, I mean, there's loads of things that, and they can change. I think that's what's a big thing, is like allow things to change. Don't get too like, I have to get this in, I have to do this workout and I have to do that's for me. Like that's
the beating yourself up part.
Or like, I'm in a phase where I'm not really into that kind of thing, and you're interested in something else. Or like I can be hard on myself. Like I love surfing, and surfing is such a thing that I would wish I could do every single day. But sometimes the idea of getting the whole board in my car and doing all these things, I build up into this like elaborate thing. Even though I know the minute I hit the water, I'm just going to be like, oh, I'm so pleased I'm here. But I can get in the way, or I can beat myself up that I haven't been that much. And it's just, it's a funny thing.
Does surfing translate? This is going to sound kind of corny and sort of stereotyped, but is surfing a type of meditation for you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think
that's what everybody says, but I think it's really true.
Oh yeah. Also, unlike a lot of sports, you're not as specifically relying on nature. Like you could really want to surf today, but there's no surf.
Right.
So it's like, what do you? You can't hate the ocean. Like, oh gosh, why don't you provide me some waves? Although if you do, then or maybe you do it first. Like some people are like, why can't we go? I really wanted to go. Like, well, we can't go. Like, I'm sorry, but like it's not
happening
but
today.
Like that's part of it, Yeah.
And
even just a observation thing that I love to do. Like you learn most, or I have learned everything from observing other people surf and just observing how the water moves is like everything. How a wave builds, how it curls, how it, breaks, how it, all those things, how the tide is moving, how a rip current could be moving. There's a point break, a beach break. There's all these intricacies that just like fascinate me. And it's time and observation that allows you to create a feeling for the water. Like, oh, I feel like this wave coming, like it feels like one I should take.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting to like
that selection.
To trust, trust your instincts. And sometimes even if like a great wave goes by, you just watch it because it's like a great wave and you're like, cool. You know what I mean? Like I think it happens a bit less in LA because there's so many and everyone's like wants to get on the wave and it can be quite aggressive. But you go to more remote places and like there's going to be another perfect wave coming along. So you're just like, I'll just watch this one. So it's a good slowing. I think for me, coming from London where I couldn't just leave my house and go to the beach and surf, that's not part of my daily thing. Being here and being able to do that while still living a life that's connected to my work, my industry, a social life, a cosmopolitan life, yet still managing to do that is something that I'm super like lucky and excited to have. I honestly I've never out of different sort of causes and organizations I've worked with over my lifespan, I have never had as much enthusiasm and interest and action taken as I have with all of the work that I've been doing, with the environmental stuff, with Greenpeace, with single-use plastics. And I think it's because people really realize, oh, this is something I can do. I don't have to, it's not aid. I don't, if it's not like I'm asking, it's not organizations that need donations for aid, which is obviously a huge part of what people need. And I know that the audience that I'm speaking to are going to be people who are young and ready to make good choices, and they want to make good choices, and they have time maybe to carve out to learn more about them, but at that stage in their life they're not ready to start putting aside part of their salary to start donating to aid and things. So to me, time is often more valuable than money, and I think, and if you're able to carve out that time or show to people you can make these quick choices and breaking of habits that don't at first may seem really long-winded, but once you ingrain them into your day-to-day, like, oh, I've got to go back to the car, I forgot my reusable utensils, and I just sat down at this lunch place and they've got plastic knives and forks. Like, it's not that difficult to run back to your car and go get it, but it's just
shame
so quick.
that comes with that. I'm just shamed all the time.
I'm like, you're gonna use that?
Yeah.
Do you really want that?
Yeah.
Or when people are like, oh, don't you want it? And I'm like, no. And I'm that person that sometimes I'll just be like, oh no. If it depends how well I know the person, be like, oh no, I'm okay, I don't want that. And then other people that I know well and like will kind of maybe be ironic about it, or I am trying to use it as a moment to like silently or maybe heavy-handedly educate someone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I don't have my reusable cups, so I'm not going to get it. Or like, oh no, I don't want that sample. It comes in like a little thing of plastic. Like I don't need to sample it. I'm just going to guess that I like it.
Yeah. I love that. I'll probably like that.
Which is funny because it's not like I'm so indecisive.
Yeah.
So if something comes along and it's wrapped in a single-use material that I don't agree with, well, then the decision's made. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not having it.
I wonder if there's a direct correlation that you see in your own mental health since becoming more involved in your activism.
Yeah, I think with a lot of things, what's that saying? It's charity starts at home. And I think, we've always thought about, to be global, you've got to think local and all those things that, start at home. And I think if we're trying to sort of clean up and protect our world and our planet, we're going to need to do a lot of like cleaning out of our own house, in terms of our house as ourself, our body, not necessarily our house, but like start with ourselves, then maybe our house, then our street, then our community, then our city, then our, continent, then, all those things. And or often you can catch yourself going too big and being like, wait a minute, I'm being a bit hypocritical here because I don't make those choices.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people, when they have got into very fiercely sort of environmental, if you're going to live a zero waste lifestyle, which I don't live, but you can very much live, I would love to. But a lot of the stories I hear from people who do that is that they were maybe studying environmental science, or they were, sitting on the, board of a big, non-profit organization, and they thought, oh, unless I'm really living and breathing this myself, how can I like be live and breathe it for everyone else? And I think there's give and takes with those things. I think if you're able to, then that's like so admirable. But at the same sense, if you're able to take on 70% of that lifestyle and be truthful and honest about why you feel challenged to take on the other 30, that's like a more humanistic like way of showing how you're attempting to be part of the solution. I think what I've also, there's like cleaning yourself out, whether or not that's just taking care of yourself in the way you'd want to take care of a garden. I think also what I've learned from taking more care and being a bit more aware of what I throw in the trash can has made me realize how it is just an extended like mindful sort of practice, because I'm taking full responsibility of what I'm doing. Like I could, I could take the free sample of ice cream on a plastic spoon and just chuck it in the bin and not think like, I don't even know where they're putting that. Are they recycling it? Is it even made of recyclable plastic? Is recycling even recycled? Like, you think of you've got to start thinking about the full, I think, which is what it's taught me. You got to think about the full life of a product when you interact with it, because you're choosing to consume it And we're in a consumer society where like consumption is just like, especially in this country, celebrated massively. Like, let's consume, let's keep buying things. Like, and no one is ever thinking like about the afterlife of anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's changing and it's shifting, and I hope it changes. But we've been living in such a linear way. And I think that's the same linear way of like how we take care of ourselves. Like, I'll do this, not going to think about the consequences, just going to keep going because I want to get to the next level. I want to get the next job promotion. I want that house. I want that girlfriend, that boyfriend. Yeah. And it's like, but it's that survival and that sort of like fight or flight, like, you know, next thing. And then you crash, which I do. But what's taught me so much about being a little bit more mindful about what I consume is I think about things in a more, you know, circular kind of way. And I think the only way that like great change is going to happen for the environment and politically for so many different things and for the health of so many different people is if we start thinking a bit more like in that circular minded way, in that more secular society rather than this like linear thing. And realizing that everything that goes around does like come around in the same way that you think something about yourself and like people are probably going to believe that of you.
Right.
And it's thoughts. Like a self-worth thing, you know?
Yeah. Thoughts and intentions and how they impact you and how they impact your systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the parallel.
Yeah, and I think it's just, to me, it's become more and more connected. And it's been amazing how, you know, for me, I started with the sort of single-use plastic packaging as, to me, that was the most just everywhere. And I see it now everywhere. Like, I'm walking down it's this bad thing too. I'm walking down the street and it's like
obsessing,
red flags going.
Yeah.
It's like,
obsessing over little cups and
shit. Or I have like
yeah.
dreams and nightmares, and it's just, that's like the bad side of it. But it's opened me up to just more mindfully think about like all things I consume and waste, not just plastic, which has become my kind of main thing, but you realize all these other materials, or like, do I need that? Like, it's just consumption habits.
Yeah. Like,
do I need to, like, do I have something similar to that? Or like, do I need it right now? Can I just wait when I get home and I can, you know, make some coffee when I get home, or, you know, all those things. And it's like realizing, and that's just like a slowing down.
Is that enough, or are we fucked?
I think, no, I think I couldn't live day to day if I didn't think there was hope with it, because otherwise, I mean, may as well just go in, you know,
it's another good mental health parallel, right? If
exactly.
you just live without this sense of hope,
I think
you're liable to off yourself.
Yeah. And I think, again, that goes back to like choosing your battle slightly. Like, okay, maybe you think a lot about water and you think about how much in this state there's not much.
Yeah.
So, you know, am I going to make sure I turn the tap off while I'm brushing my teeth and then turn it back on when I'm, you know, what is your thing?
I've been doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your thing that feels like real and true to you, not just something you're adopting off someone else because you think you should be doing it?
Right.
And I think that's like the same as, you know, mental patterns. Like, oh, like, am I adopting this like super sociable character because I think like that's how I'm going to make friends and how I should be in this world, but realize like actually I'm adopting something that's not actually that good for me or doesn't fit
true to me.
Yeah.
A special thanks goes out to Newport Academy, a series of evidence-based healing centers for adolescents and families struggling with mental health issues. They published an article in their mailer about a month ago outlining the various studies cited in this episode.